The galaxy had been at peace for several centuries, a fragile truce between the many species that inhabited the stars. The various alien factions had long since learned the art of coexistence, bound together by treaties and mutual respect for one another's territories. But there were always those who thought they could challenge the status quo, those who believed their power would be enough to break the balance of the universe. The Zol'rak, a brutal and ambitious species, were among them. The Zol'rak were a militaristic race, their society built on conquest and dominance. They had long coveted the resources found in the human-controlled regions of space. Despite their technologically advanced fleet, the Zol'rak had never been able to break the human defenses, nor had they been able to break the resolve of the human people. For centuries, they had plotted, waiting for the right moment to strike, believing that humanity's expansion and strength were a threat to their empire. Then, the Zol'rak made their move. In the dead of night, they launched an unprovoked attack on a human colony situated on the edge of a strategic trade route. The attack was swift and brutal. Bombs fell from the sky, tearing apart the cities, while the Zol'rak ground forces stormed the streets. It was meant to be a show of power, a declaration that humanity was not invincible. But what the Zol'rak did not understand was that provoking the humans was a dangerous gamble. Among the survivors of the attack was Lieutenant Sarah Alvarez, a seasoned human soldier. She had been stationed on the colony when the Zol'rak struck, and she had watched helplessly as the city she loved burned around her. She had seen her friends and fellow soldiers fall in the initial bombardment, but she had survived, and her resolve only grew stronger. The Zol'rak had made a mistake. They had underestimated humanity's ability to fight back. Sarah was not an ordinary soldier. She had seen combat across multiple fronts, from skirmishes with pirates in deep space to full-scale battles against alien invasions. But the attack on her colony was different. This wasn't just about war, it was about something much deeper, the survival of humanity itself. And humanity, when pushed to the edge, had always proven to be more resilient than any species gave them credit for. As soon as the first human warships reached the devastated colony, Sarah and her team were among the first to be deployed for a counterattack. She stood in the command center, her eyes fixed on the tactical map. The Zol'rak fleet was still in orbit, but they were spread thin, and their forces on the ground were uncoordinated. This was the moment. Sarah's hand clenched into a fist, her mind calculating the best course of action. "Lieutenant, we're ready," the operations officer said, his voice tense but resolute. "We can launch the counteroffensive. The Zol'rak fleet is vulnerable." Sarah nodded, her mind sharp despite the chaos. "We strike fast. No hesitation. No mercy. They've provoked humanity. Now they'll learn why that was a mistake." With that, the human fleet, led by Sarah's strategic brilliance, launched its counteroffensive. The battle that followed was a testament to humanity's resolve. The Zol'rak, despite their superior numbers, could not keep up with the speed and adaptability of the human forces. The human military, utilizing guerrilla tactics and superior intelligence, tore through the Zol'rak defenses. But it wasn't just military prowess that made the difference. It was the sheer willpower of the human soldiers, the fire in their hearts that burned brighter than any weapon. The Zol'rak underestimated the fighting spirit of humanity. They believed that their technology, their sheer numbers, would be enough to conquer any species. But what they didn't understand was that humanity was not a species to be dominated. They were a people who had fought tooth and nail for every inch of territory they held. They had endured hardship, loss, and sacrifice, and in doing so, they had forged an indomitable will to survive. As the battle raged on, the Zol'rak forces began to fall back. Their once confident commanders were now scrambling to retreat, their communication lines in disarray. The human forces, relentless and unyielding, pushed forward, and within hours the tide had turned. The Zol'rak were no longer the aggressors, they were now the ones on the defensive. In the final stages of the battle, Sarah's unit found themselves at the heart of the Zol'rak command center, a massive structure built deep underground. They had to push through waves of enemy resistance, but with every step, they could feel the Zol'rak's confidence crumbling. The human soldiers were unstoppable, fueled by the need to protect their homes, their families, and their very way of life. When they finally breached the command center, Sarah was the first to step into the control room, her weapon raised and her eyes focused. The Zol'rak general, a towering figure in battle armor, stood before her, his expression one of disbelief. He had expected victory, not defeat. His empire had boasted of its superiority for so long, and now it was falling apart before him. "You've made a grave mistake," Sarah said, her voice calm but filled with conviction. "You thought you could defeat humanity by crushing a colony, but you've only awakened a sleeping giant." The Zol'rak general, realizing the full extent of his mistake, tried to flee, but it was too late. The human forces had already surrounded the area, and his fate was sealed. Within minutes, the Zol'rak general and his high-ranking officers were captured, their fleet dismantled, and their forces scattered. The battle was won, but the message sent by humanity was even more significant. The Zol'rak had learned the hard way that humans were not to be provoked. They had been foolish to underestimate the resilience and strength of the human spirit. In their arrogance, they had thought they could simply crush a colony and break humanity's resolve. Instead, they had sparked a fire that could not be extinguished. As Sarah looked out over the battlefield, the aftermath of the war looming before her, she felt a sense of pride in her people. The war had been costly, but humanity had shown the galaxy what it meant to never back down, to fight with everything they had, and to never forget that there was always strength in unity. The Zol'rak had learned a lesson they would never forget. And from that moment on, the galaxy knew that humanity was not a species to be trifled with. When provoked, humans would not only defend themselves, they would rise up, stronger than ever before, and leave a lasting imprint on the stars. The victory over the Zol'rak was just the beginning of a larger shift in the galaxy. The remnants of the once feared Zol'rak Empire were left scattered, their forces in disarray, their leadership fractured. They were forced to retreat from the human colonies, but the damage had been done. Their attempt to conquer humanity had exposed a critical flaw in their strategy. They had underestimated the power of unity and resilience that coursed through every human. In the aftermath of the battle, Sarah Alvarez and her team were hailed as heroes, but Sarah felt something more profound than pride. She knew this victory wasn't just about the military success. It was a powerful statement to every other species in the galaxy that humanity could never again be seen as weak or insignificant. Humanity had stood firm against the Zol'rak, and now, their reputation echoed throughout the galaxy as one of unyielding strength. But Sarah knew the fight wasn't truly over. The Zol'rak might have been defeated, but there were other factions, other species that still looked at humanity with contempt, jealousy, or fear. The peace was fragile, and the stakes were higher than ever. It wasn't just about one battle or one colony. It was about the future of the entire human race and the future of galactic relations. Humanity, however, had learned something vital through this war. They had realized that it wasn't enough to simply defend themselves. They had to take a stand on the galactic stage, showing that they were willing to fight for what they believed in, to defend not just their territories but their values. They understood now that strength was not just measured in firepower, it was measured in resolve, in unity, and in the determination to protect the weak, the innocent, and the vulnerable. As the months passed, the human leadership convened to address the long-term effects of the war. They sought to rebuild not only the war-torn colonies but the fractured relationships between species that had been strained by the Zol'rak invasion. In a historic move, they called for a galactic summit, inviting all major factions, including former enemies of the Zol'rak, to come together and discuss a new way forward. Sarah Alvarez, though reluctant to step into the role of diplomat, was among the first to advocate for peace. Having fought on the front lines, she knew firsthand the costs of war, but she also knew that there was no future in perpetuating cycles of violence. She spoke passionately at the summit, reminding the galaxy's leaders that the victory over the Zol'rak was not just a victory for humanity. It was a victory for everyone who believed in peace and stability. The summit was tense, with old hostilities simmering beneath the surface. The Zol'rak's former allies, now wary of their own downfall, were reluctant to accept humanity's terms. But Sarah's words, and the actions of the human military in the aftermath of the war, spoke louder than any threats or demands. Humanity had proven its strength in battle, but now it was showing its strength in diplomacy. One by one, the alien factions began to reconsider their positions. Humanity's reputation had shifted from one of isolation and suspicion to one of respect and power. The fear that had once surrounded them began to fade, replaced by a grudging acknowledgement that humanity could no longer be ignored or dismissed. They were a force to be reckoned with, not just militarily, but as a political and diplomatic powerhouse in the galaxy. The summit concluded with an unprecedented agreement. Former enemies, including the fractured remnants of the Zol'rak, pledged to abide by new rules of engagement, and several of the galaxy's most powerful factions signed treaties with humanity to ensure the peaceful sharing of resources, technology, and knowledge. The human fleet, once a symbol of just defense, became a symbol of peacekeeping and strength. The human military, now regarded as one of the most formidable forces in the galaxy, vowed to use their power not only for protection but to help maintain stability and order throughout the stars. As Sarah looked out over the summit, watching the representatives of once hostile species shaking hands, she realized that the war had not only forged an unbreakable spirit in humanity, it had created a new beginning for the galaxy as a whole. The Zol'rak had learned the hard way that provoking humanity was a grave mistake. But more importantly, the galaxy had learned that humanity was more than just a species of fighters. They were a species capable of leadership, of peace, and of building alliances that transcended past animosities. In the years that followed, Sarah Alvarez remained a key figure in the shaping of galactic peace. She traveled to various worlds, helping to mediate conflicts, offer humanitarian aid, and establish a new era of cooperation. Her name became synonymous with the transformation of humanity's place in the galaxy. The human colonies, once isolated and vulnerable, were now seen as powerful, influential players in the galactic community. The message that humanity had sent was clear: never underestimate them. Humans were not just survivors, they were creators, builders, and leaders. And when provoked, they would rise not just to defend themselves but to reshape the galaxy in a way that ensured peace for all. As Sarah sat in the quiet of her quarters one evening, looking up at the stars, she knew the battle was never truly over. But for the first time, she felt confident that humanity had earned its place in the universe, not through violence, but through strength of character, resilience, and the unbreakable bond of unity. The galaxy had learned why humans were not to be provoked. And for the first time in history, peace seemed like more than just a fleeting dream. It felt like a lasting reality.